Sowell Collection Conference. I do appreciate you coming. I appreciate all the writers who've come and all the students who've come to listen. But this is our concluding session, and I'm really thrilled, actually. I've made some complaints. I've moaned and groaned a little bit about how hard it is to schedule things and the mistakes I see I do every year. But I met Barbara Rass last year for the first time in Italy when she was a teacher and mentor in a writing program that I was attending. And she was, struck me as she is, as a fascinating woman, a fantastic poet, generally kind and compassionate, and her criticism and the things she said about my poems were kind and compassionate, but very instructive, which is good, both ways. So when I was casting about in my mind for people to invite to present here, Barbara just came right to the top. I was just so thrilled with her poetry that I read, and thrilled to get to know her as a person. So that's my little anecdote here. Now I have the official biography, which will show you much more about her career than the fact that I met her and admired her. But, okay. Barbara Rass is the author of 3 poetry collections, Bite Every Sorrow, which won the Walt Whitman Award and was also awarded the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. The next book is One Hidden Stuff, and the last one, The Last Skin, winner of the award for poetry from the Texas Institute of Letters. Rass has received fellowships from the John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, among others. Her poems have appeared in the New Yorker, Tin House, Granta, 5 Points, American Scholar, Massachusetts Review, and Orion, as well as in many other magazines and anthologies. She is the editor of a collection of short fiction and translation, Costa Rica, a Traveler's Literary Companion. She has traveled extensively with the International Writing Program, joining its effort to foster cultural diplomacy. Ross now lives in San Diego, and she is the founding director emerita of Trinity University Press. So please join me in welcoming Barbara Rass.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you all for being here. I feel like the last pony following up the herd, and I just feel glad that all of you have stayed in the pack so that I can catch up and join you as well. I'm also, besides being grateful to Diane and her company, her fellows who helped to put on this spectacularly great gathering, I want to say how humbled I am to be in the presence of such fabulous writers and to have learned and to say how much I've learned from the vast constellation of different presenters. And I was expecting this to be a rich experience, but it really has blown me away with its richness, diversity, and really profound interest. So I just want to applaud everyone. And I hope Diane won't mind, but being an editor for 45 years, it's in my blood to make edits to everything. And I do actually live in San Antonio, Texas, not San Diego. But it's okay, Diane, because you were just in San Diego. And I'll tell a story that I was introduced at Trinity. We had this practice of every year we would introduce new staff to the faculty and staff during the first convocation. And I actually introduced a new staff member by the wrong name. So among gaffes, there are worse things than saying someone's from a different place, like Steve Martin's a Canadian writer. I was going to read mostly nature oriented things. But because it's the last event or the last presentation, I thought I would change it up a little bit because I want to introduce a little bit of levity and not stick with what has become more depressing in the way of noticing not just nature that is here, but nature that is passing. And also, I want to share with you some of my landscape, which is not Texas, but the North Atlantic Ocean. I grew up on the shores of Buzzards Bay, named so because an early settler saw an osprey and mistakenly thought it was a buzzard and thought that would be a great name for a bay, which seems like mistake upon mistake, in my opinion. But in any case, this first poem is called Song. What if it's only waves? Waves making their restless peace on the broken shore, the lull between them like a held breath before it's blown into air as music. Haven't I always missed the ocean, the way its salt buoyed me up inside the wet, the air above warmer than the water below, the liquid line between breathing and not, so innocent, so permeable. Floating there over the deep, untouchable bottom, out past the line the waves made as they curl to hurl themselves on the sand. I could be far from the rinky-dink, the hullabaloo, far even from the headlongingness of water rushing forward and sloshing back like desire going nowhere. Over and over, the waves break on the gleaming sand, while a gull, diving in and out of the perfect again and again, draws a thread between the air and the water, sewing together their beautiful blues as if to mend the wound of the world. This is another ocean poem that is self-explanatory. Once the ocean takes you. The ocean grants you absolution, or it floods you with sin. Either way, it cleanses itself, water rushing toward bigger water. Fish water, whale water, water of barnacles, starfish and salt, water gleaming through ages of starlight, moonlight, sunlight, and hiding most of itself in the dark. Once the ocean takes you, it's over. You can gaze all you want into the distance, but nothing else consoles, just the huge restlessness of water in which you see all your past, all your time to come, all the questions about what makes love like sand, its infinity of drifts and shapes, close up, its cosmos of debris and sparkle, and nothing but the blue horizon in its umpteen blues, all calling you to where you belong, at the ocean's edge, feeling at peace, understanding nothing. I'm going to switch to some newer poems. These I don't really have much to say about because they're new, and I also hope that even though they may not be perfectly finished, that if you find yourself unhappy with some of the rawness, that you won't grimace. Just, sort of silently groan or something. So this first one is A Day of Dragonflies. It was Sunday, scores of dragonflies, each inscribing its own arabesque in flight, as if it was music they danced to, whizzing and flashing through all moods, here manic, there depressive, healing sufferers in their wake, as long as the afflicted paid close enough attention, took note of leaping lizards, the tortoise who pressed its right foot down on a stem to better bite off the flower top, and praised the palms, their fronds eternally flirting with winds the dragonflies played in, dashing to songs only they could hear, older than Sumerian, older than Sanskrit, Etruscan, older than a flute made of nearly transparent bird bone, older even than weeping and wailing, older than beating a hairy chest and roaring. One of the great things that I like and admired in the poems that we heard this afternoon about surgery and animal animal treatments is the vocabulary that each particular line of work has as its specialty. And this poem begins with some of that and then just kind of takes off. But I'm always fascinated how each particular field has such rich vocabulary that you wouldn't normally come in contact with. And in this case, I met someone who described himself as a drummer as opposed to a percussionist. And then he began to tell me about some of the instruments that he played. What to take? From the drummer, take the cymbals, the crash and hi-hat, and walk like you're shining. From the composer, take snow under ice melting, sung by young voices in the timbre of wind blowing through the antlers of reindeer. From the organ builder, take the names of stops, nighthorn, vox celeste, and chimney flute, instrumental sustains that theoretically go on forever. Eternity eludes the NRA and ants who cannot hear, but I swear that following Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto, note for note, while rain sledgehammered the road the first time I drove to Swannanoa, got me there safely. From a gypsy, take any castanets offered and play them first thing to get you out of bed, despite the news of 9 dead in Charleston who invited Dylan Roof into their prayer service at the Emmanuel AME Church, where he repeatedly shot the gun whose one note is death. Take a chance, take guns away, and ask people to hum more, to whistle if, unlike me, they know how, to talk often like baby turtles who start vocalizing inside their eggs. Every river's original name was water weeping, water laughing. Take the call of a cricket or a ricochet of crickets, each with its own thumbprint. Take the cry of a bush baby at night that narrows next to nothing the distance between it and us. Both are wailings scored by loneliness, both shocking the night air, calling for kin, calling for help to perpetuate the species. Take a lesson from the bush baby with its esoterically large eyes that see what we don't see, its paws and mouth that eat whatever they kill. The day a crucial button fell off my blouse. Into the toilet, Was the day Trudy, my 9-pound terrier mutt, put her paw on my bare foot where it felt velvety. And though I wanted to send thoughts of gratitude into her little dog brain, all I could do was envy her for not having to wear clothes or to get her mental panties in a wad trying to figure out what the Nepali poet meant by Westerners love Rilke because he approaches the preliterate. It was the day I learned that Dell has a palimpsest to record fist bangs on computers and thus dodge warranties. It was the day I might punch a machine as if anger could fix the brokenness of parents whose dismay over their own choices could be passed down to their kids through the knives set at the table. It was the day I learned the CIA plans to geoengineer the stratosphere by spraying toxic coal fly ash over the planet to combat global warming. And on this day, I learned residents in Karachi are digging mass graves to prepare for another heat wave like last year's that killed 1,300 people. Increasingly, days like this end with who the hell will pickaxe a trench for me when it's 127 degrees. Okay, that's going to be the last of the really downer poems. You know, people say, where do your poems come from? And of course, there's no answer for that. They come from anywhere you can get them, and sometimes it's in the most surprising places. And in our kitchen, we have a whiteboard where we write down grocery items that we need. And I was walking through the kitchen, and I saw at the bottom of the whiteboard 2 words, bugs pray. Now, these, if you elide them, actually spell bug spray. But that wasn't as interesting to me as bugs pray. So this is what came of that. And I want to say that 3 lines from the bottom, the word pray, as in prayer, changes to the word pray as in hunting for food, and so it's P-R-E-Y. Bugs pray. Bugs pray in a range from dry ice to boiling oil, dividing their supplications, like us, between desire and panic. Is the God they pray to a tycoon or a pickled herring? Don't question science. Consider the bee with its furry pelt that, if harvested, could blow sable out of the market, or the earthworm, its prayer, let me rise early enough. Spiders pray their spit will last long enough if they need a quick drop to ground. Beetles pray for buzzards to lead them to the carcass. Atheists, ants shout, on guard, and herd aphids for the sweet shit tickled out of them by an ant antenna. Bugs can pray in the language of paisley or sirens, or they might prefer the flutter of silk kites whose luxury they envy. Don't ask about the praying mantis, the prison matron of devotion, who fucks and kills, digesting and defecating her mate. The world of bugs prays and prays and prays, with ignorance in the fervor of cockroaches, dedicated and designed to outlast all of us. So, I'm married to a guy who likes to invent things. And this is a poem that pays tribute to his dedication to invention and also the somewhat haphazard consequences of those attempts. It's called Pigeons, a Love Poem. The pigeons are back, shitting and laughing in the eaves, gangs hanging out of reach, laughing the way I once laughed so fast, my mouthful of wine flew across the table onto my friend and his funny story. And in the pigeons' laughter, we can hear liquid gurgling, dumbly defying your latest invention, a motion-activated sound machine that made a mechanical wheeze every time a bird landed. And yes, the pigeons fled, the noise of what sounded like a motorized heart lurching in the direction of life. But when I complained that the on-off of an artificial heart left me breathless, you gave up on the deterrence of sound and set to work on a silent water shooting device, bringing water up to the second floor with a garden hose, which looked to me like a code violation, snaking up against the swami yellow of our clapboards. And as you perfected the ultimate pigeon banishment, a board flew out of your hand. The way the wine flew from my mouth, the way pigeons flew from that made-up groaning heart. And in the same way that my wine landed on Dave's shirt, your board landed on Billy's convertible parked in the driveway next door, ripping through the canvas top. And even though this was the second board to make the flight from your hands to her car, last time the hood, and though for the price of our homeowner's deductible, we could have hired a guy to sit on the porch for a short eternity to shoot the last pigeon into kingdom come, I laughed harder than the time I spit the wine. I laughed over and over, passionately, enough to waste a bottle's worth of airborne Bordeaux. And because your hands have held on to me for more than 30 years, never slipping, never letting go, what's a couple of boards over the edge? And what's love if not this? I assure you that I don't write only poems about my husband, but this next one I'm reading because when I read it in places like Bread Loaf, nobody laughs, and that was a real rude awakening to think that you could actually get through this poem and people could look dour. So when I moved to Georgia from the Bay Area, I came out of the closet and started listening to country music, which I had loved all along, but living with a music snob, never felt that I could bring myself to reveal, despite having been married for decades. And so I would listen to it in the car. And of course, when Alfred, my husband, would get in the car, the station would be tuned to a country music station. And he would say, "Is that you listening to country music?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And he'd say, "Why?" And I'd say, "Because." And he'd say, "Well, what do you like about it?" And I'd say, "I like it." "Well, what?" "I like it." "What is it you like about it?" I said, explaining your taste in music is like explaining whether you like orange juice or grapefruit. It's not something that really comes with a ready-made explanation, especially if you don't have the musical background to justify all of the history, the long history of country music, which I didn't. I just loved the songs. So what do you do when you don't have an explanation for something? You write a poem. A wife explains why she likes country. Because those cows in the bottomland are black and white, colors anyone can understand, even against the green of the grass, where they glide like yes and no, nothing in between. Because in country, heartache has nowhere to hide. It's the church of abundant life, the Alamo, the hubbub of the hoi polloi, the parallel lines of rail fences. Because I like rodeos more than I like golf. Because there's something about the sound of mealworms and leeches and the dream of a double wide that reminds me this is America. Because of the simple pleasure of a last chance, because sometimes whiskey tastes better than wine, because hauling hogs on the road is as good as it gets when the big bodies are layered like pigs in a cake, not one layer, but two. Because only country has a gun with a full choke and a slide guitar that melts playing it cool into sweaty surrender in one note. Because in country you can smoke forever and it'll never kill you. Because roadbeds, flatbeds, your bed or mine. Because the package store is right across from the chicken plant and it sells bold peanuts. And because I'm fixin' to wear boots to the dance and make my hair bigger. Because no smarty pants, just easy rhymes, perfect love. Because I'm lost deep within myself and the sad songs call me out. Because even you, with your superior aesthetic, cried when Tammy Wynette died. Because my people come from dirt. Okay, this is the last poem, and it's long. And I want to thank you for your kind attention. And I won't keep you longer from the next frivolities and the potluck tonight. This is called You Can't Have It All. But you can have the fig tree and its fat leaves like clown hands gloved with green. You can have the touch of a single 11-year-old finger on your cheek, waking you at 1 a.m. to say, the hamster is back. You can have the purr of the cat and the soulful look of the black dog, the look that says, if I could, I would bite every sorrow until it fled. And when it is August, you can have it August, and abundantly so. You can have love, though often it will be mysterious, like the white foam that bubbles up at the top of the bean pot over the red kidneys until you realize foam's twin is blood. You can have the skin at the center between a man's legs, so solid, so doll-like. You can have the life of the mind, glowing occasionally in priestly vestments, never admitting pettiness, never stooping to bribe the sullen guard who'll tell you all roads narrow at the border. You can speak a foreign language, and it can mean something sometimes. You can visit the marker on the grave where your father wept openly. You can't bring back the dead, but you can have the words forgive and forget hold hands as if they had a lifetime to spend together. And you can be grateful for makeup, the way it kisses your face, half spice, half amnesia. Grateful for Mozart, his many notes racing one another toward joy, for towels sucking up the drops on your clean skin, and for deeper thirsts, for passion fruit, for saliva. You can have the dream of Egypt, the horses of Egypt and you riding in the hot sand. You can have your grandfather sitting on the side of your bed, at least for a while. You can have clouds and letters, the leaping of distances, an Indian food with yellow sauce like sunrise. You can't count on grace to pick you out of a crowd, but here's your friend to teach you how to high jump, how to throw yourself over the bar backwards until you learn about love, about sweet surrender. And here are periwinkles, buses that kneel, farms in the mind as real as Africa. And when adulthood fails you, you can still summon the memory of the black swan on the pond of your childhood, the rye bread with peanut butter and bananas your grandmother gave you while the rest of the family slept. There is the voice you can still summon at will, like your mother's. It will always whisper, you can't have it all, but there is this. Thank you. So, I will answer questions if anyone has any. I can't imagine that there are, because being this late in the day, the outdoors beckons. So, on to
Do you want to
Diane's.
tell me why you don't live in San Diego?
Because I can't afford it. I would live in San Diego in a heartbeat. Not that I've ever spent any time there, but
I heard people laughing, and I have no idea until Jill told me what I'd said.
it's okay. Oh, Kurt?
It's not a question, I was just going to add, here's to the last poem.
Thank you.
The only thing we have now are closing remarks, and that's just right. Thank you once again for coming. I always enjoy these. I find them exhausting, and mentally I get fried, obviously. But it's a great chance for me to see people I met 6 years ago again, and many times again, and then to meet new people